Hello! I come to you today with another BookTube SFF Babbles video. As last time, I will link all of the BookTube SFF Awards clickies down below and you can go check that out if you want to. Today's topic is underrated fantasy. Now, sometimes the books that I read I feel aren't very easily defined between science fiction and fantasy, probably because I'm a bit of a noob to all of this, but I feel like there's hard sci-fi and high fantasy and then this big spectrum in the middle, and I feel like a lot of the books that I read are sort of here. The main way that I try and categorise is if there is a world based in magic, then it's fantasy, and if there is like tech and science, then it's sci-fi. But there are certain series that I feel sort of it's very fuzzy, particularly Tales of the Ketty J by Chris Wooding, in as much as it is always categorised as sci-fi by publishers Gallant and everyone else who categorises books. Yet there is a strong magical element and supernatural element to the world that fits in sort of very easily. I've spoken about it before, so I'll put the Wizzy link across the top and you can check that out and let me know where you think that sits. That aside, here are some of the books that I think are underrated and definitely fall into the fantasy category. By definitely, I think probably the first books I'm going to talk about are actually a series called Magnifica Americana, which sounds like a Harry Potter spell, but it's not. It is a series by M.K. Hobson, which I would class as like a historical fantasy with a bit of romance shoved in there, just for good measure. It follows the adventures of witch Emily Edwards and warlock Edward Stanton. In the first book, Native Star, we meet Emily, who is living with her family who are in sort of dire straits, and she thinks that the best way to get them out of this is to cast a love spell on a wealthy gentleman so that she can marry and therefore sort of pull her family up along with her. However, this backfires, all goes wrong. She ends up with some sort of mysterious precious stone embedded in her hand. Enter Dreadnought Stanton to help her out, and we go from there. The stone is wanted by lots of different people, it's really precious. We are introduced to a world where magic is legal but not universally loved by everybody, so we have magical societies who are trying to protect their members, people who are practicing magic for both good and bad, and then people who are very prejudiced against those who can do magic. As mentioned before, I seem to like to pick out series that are genre fusions, and so as well as the magic, we also have very strong Western themes, but also sort of the etiquette of the late 1800s, which I really enjoyed the banter between the two main characters because of this. I think, sort of, I don't know, if Pride and Prejudice was a bit more wordy, perhaps, and then in the Wild West with magic. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It gets a little bit ridiculous at times, and I sometimes got frustrated with Emily being sort of naive and not understanding what was going on, but I also appreciate that this is a plot device because she is our sort of gateway into the world and how we learn a lot of information. If you like sort of soulless or gaslight fantasy, steampunk, this is going to be up your alley, but there is a lot of magic, and I felt that the world was very complete and everything fits together well. The fusion of magic sits perfectly within the world, and the way that it's been sort of put through the legal system so that it's a little bit like in True Blood when it's like, oh well, vampires are real and now we'll serve blood in bars and stuff. It's like, oh well, magic is real, so now we have to sort of think of a way to control it and legalise it, and this is sort of interesting because you see some like political elements and the prejudices of other people. So yeah, we start with the Native Star. There's also Hidden Goddess and The Warlock's Curse are the three full-length books that are currently out at the moment. We also have The Ladies and Gentlemen, which is a short story, and there is also another book coming out later this year, which is The Unsteady Earth. I can't find any sort of cover art for that at the moment, so ooh, mystery. So yeah, I don't tend to enjoy recommending series that haven't been completed, but this is a lot of fun. You'll whiz through it, fast-paced, which I always enjoy. Yeah, go read. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is the first in a series, and as much as I have just said that I don't like recommending series that haven't finished yet, this is unfinished because the first book came out the very end of 2015. This is one where I'm just sort of more interested to find out other people's opinions, because I've not really read anything like it, and that is Silver on the Road by Laura Ann Gilman, and it is the first in the Devil's West series. Bit of a theme here. This is another magical western. I don't know why, I do really enjoy those two sort of genres fused together. It just really strikes something with me. This is a lot more slow-paced and gritty than Magnifica Americana. To me, this feels more like a different reality than an alternative history. But basically, in this, the United States is split into three. We have the actual United States on the western coast. We have Spanish-controlled territory on, and then in the middle is essentially no man's land, aka the Devil's Territory. We meet up with our protagonist in the Devil's Territory in a little town called Flood, which is where the devil actually resides. In this case, the devil shows himself as a bar owner. He runs a gambling house, and he makes deals with people. It's all very subtle and slow. There's no obvious, I'm the devil and I'm making a deal with you. It's very much ingrained into the history of the world that people know what is happening when they go and see this man. And everyone just calls him the boss. And it's very, yeah, underhanded the way that he is the devil and there's no, he's from hell and there's God. It's just very, you are doing a deal with a very sordid man, and I really enjoyed that whole, like, is it the devil like we know him, or is it the devil in another sense of the word? So basically Izzy was traded when she was a baby by her parents for their freedom, and she's worked for the boss up until she's 16, because obviously that is the age that all of the shiz goes down in these sorts of books. And when she reaches 16, she has to decide whether she wants to go out and be free on her own, or whether she wants to continue to work for the boss. So I don't think it's a great spoiler to say she continues to work for the boss, and she decides that she wants to stay in a place that she knows, and she just has this feeling that she wants to help him out. Now this manifests itself in a way that she doesn't expect, and she actually gets sent out on the road to learn about the world, which is great because it means we get to learn about the world as well. The world as it is the Devil's Territory, but it's very spiritual. There's a lot of magic and rules, and they, I felt, were explained pretty well. It's great always to have a protagonist who doesn't know what's going on, because then you get the information, but I felt that it was explained pretty well. It wasn't just like, oh, what's going on, info dump. It was sort of gradually built upon. Izzy has a mentor when she goes out into the big wild world, and the point of it is for her to learn about everything that's happening, so it feels natural in the way that it's told. As I say, this is a very slow burn. There's no big action scenes. There is a lot of build-up, and I felt it didn't really come to a huge climax, but the way that it did... But the way that it did finish felt natural and satisfying. A lot of research was obviously done by Gilman into Native American beliefs and the magic and mythology of the West. There's actually a section in the back of the book which is further reading and lists some of the sources that she used for her research, which I thought was really good. Yeah, it just felt very grounded, very gritty and very earthy in a way that I think that Westerns tend to when they're done well. Obviously, the Native Star is a very different sort of, that's a heels up, yee-haw sort of thing, and this is more like True Grit style. I really enjoyed both of them, despite anything negative that I've said. Yeah, it would be really great if you wanted to pick any of these up and let me know what you thought. As a really quick afterword, I just want to mention Andrew Kaufman as an author for sort of, it's not, well, sometimes magical realism and sometimes fantasy, but he has a series of short books that you will whiz through that I really enjoy. I think these are probably more well known than anything else that I've talked about, but just worth a mention. If you've read any of the books, obviously let me know down below any opinions that you have. If not, what do you think? Do you like the sound of them? Are they fantasy? And until next time, ta-ta!